Dear listener, welcome once more to the Hercule Poirot Story Podcast, where the little grey cells awaken to unravel the most perplexing enigmas of the human soul. Tonight, we invite you to step into the shadowed halls of Ashford Manor, a grand estate nestled in the misty countryside of Kent, England, during the autumn of 1925. The air is thick with the chill of impending winter, and a tempestuous storm rages outside, its gales howling like the cries of restless spirits. Within these ancient walls, where opulence conceals the darkest secrets, a heinous crime has been committed. The murder of Victor Langford, the celebrated pianist whose fingers once danced upon the keys with divine grace. As the thunder crashes and the wind whispers treachery, join us in this tale of passion, betrayal, and the inexorable pursuit of justice. Should you possess insights or suspicions of your own, dear listener, we beseech you to share them in the comments below. Perhaps your own grey cells shall aid in piercing the veil of mystery. Now, let us commence. Chapter 1. The Melody of Death. In the opulent confines of Ashford Manor, nestled amidst the undulating hills of Kent, England, during the crisp autumn of 1925, the evening unfolded with an air of deceptive tranquillity. The manor itself was a testament to bygone grandeur, its Georgian architecture rising imposingly against the darkening sky, with ivy-clad walls that whispered secrets of generations past. Towering spires pierced the heavens, and labyrinthine corridors wound through the heart of the estate like veins pulsing with hidden intrigues. Outside, a tempestuous storm brewed, the wind howling through the ancient oaks that lined the gravelled drive, while sheets of rain lashed against the mullioned windows, as if nature itself conspired to veil the horrors within. Within the music room, a chamber of exquisite refinement, crystal chandeliers dangled like frozen cascades of light, casting flickering shadows upon the polished mahogany floors and sumptuous velvet draperies that framed the tall sash windows. The air was redolent with the faint aroma of beeswax polish and the lingering notes of expensive cologne. At the centrepiece stood a magnificent Steinway grand piano, its ebony surface gleaming under the soft glow of gas lamps. Seated before it was Victor Langford, the victim whose fate would soon entwine the lives of all present in a web of suspicion and deceit. Victor was a man of 42, a celebrated pianist whose reputation echoed through the concert halls of Europe. His physical presence was commanding yet refined. Sharp, angular features etched with the lines of artistic intensity, framed by raven-black hair streaked with premature silver, which lent him an air of melancholic distinction. His eyes, a piercing blue, held the depth of oceans, reflecting a soul perpetually adrift in the currents of passion and ambition. Psychologically, Victor was a complex enigma, a virtuoso whose ego demanded unwavering adulation, yet whose inner world was shadowed by insecurities rooted in a childhood of penury. Orphaned young and raised in the squalor of London's East End, he had clawed his way to fame through sheer talent and unyielding determination, amassing wealth and admirers with a ruthlessness that bordered on the tyrannical. This duality often manifested in his music, sublime melodies that could evoke tears, interspersed with discordant bursts of fury. On this fateful night, Victor's fingers danced across the ivory keys, conjuring a tempestuous rendition of Chopin's Nocturne in C-sharp minor. The notes swelled and receded like the storm outside, filling the room with a haunting beauty that belied the gathering darkness. Adjoining the music room was the drawing room, where the manor's inhabitants and guests had assembled, ostensibly for an evening of refined entertainment, but each harbouring motives as opaque as the fog rolling in from the moors. Elena Langford, Victor's wife of a decade, reclined upon a chaise longue upholstered in crimson damask. At 35, she possessed an ethereal beauty, porcelain skin that glowed luminously, auburn locks cascading in elegant waves to her shoulders, and emerald eyes that sparkled with the intelligence often underestimated. Once a promising opera singer, her career had been eclipsed by her husband's meteoric rise, relegating her to the role of ornamental consort. Her psyche was a cauldron of simmering resentment, stirred by years of neglect and whispers of Victor's infidelities. Jealousy gnawed at her like a persistent ache, fostering dreams of liberation, perhaps through divorce or something far more sinister. Yet, beneath this veneer of poise lay a vulnerability, a lingering affection that warred with her desire for vengeance. Lounging indolently by the marble fireplace, his reflection distorted in the ornate mirror above, was Reginald Langford, Victor's younger brother by 5 years. Reginald cut a dissipated figure, a ruddy complexion flushed from excessive indulgence in port and cigars, dishevelled sandy hair that defied any comb, and a perpetual sneer curling his thin lips, as if the world perpetually amused and disgusted him in equal measure. A habitual gambler, his fortunes had ebbed to the point of desperation, leaving him reliant on Victor's grudging financial support. Psychologically, Reginald was a labyrinth of envy and entitlement. He viewed the family estate as his birthright, resenting his brother's success as an usurpation. His mind teemed with schemes, petty thefts forged IOUs, each a stepping stone toward reclaiming what he believed was owed. Pacing the room with the lithe grace of a predator was Marcus Thorne, a rival pianist of 38. Tall and lean, with aquiline features that bespoke aristocratic lineage, jet black hair slicked back impeccably, and dark eyes that smouldered with unspoken intensity, Marcus exuded an aura of controlled menace. Once Victor's protégé, he had been mentored in the art of the keys, only to be cast aside when his talent threatened to surpass the master's. This betrayal had festered into a profound rancour, his ambition twisted into a thirst for retribution. Marcus's psychological profile revealed a man of obsessive precision, his every action calculated, his hatred a slow-burning fuse awaiting ignition. Flitting about the room with trays laden with crystal decanters of sherry was Sarah Jenkins, the maid of 28. Petite and unassuming, with mousy brown hair pinned neatly beneath a crisp white cap, freckled cheeks that flushed easily, and wide hazel eyes that darted nervously like those of a cornered doe, Sarah embodied the archetype of dutiful servitude. Yet, beneath this facade simmered a secret affection for Victor, born of stolen glances during late-night rehearsals and whispered compliments that ignited her lonely heart. Her soul was a fragile bloom, torn between unwavering loyalty to the household and the intoxicating ache of unrequited love, which could, in moments of despair, blossom into acts of desperate folly. Standing sentinel by the oaken door, his posture ramrod straight, was Mr. Hargrove, the butler of 55. A stoic pillar of the establishment, with grey hair cropped short in military fashion, a weathered face etched with the deep lines of long service, and steely grey eyes that observed all without betrayal of emotion, Hargrove was the epitome of discretion. His psyche, however, concealed layers of repressed indignation, accumulated from years of Victor's imperious demands and public humiliations, snide remarks about his age, deductions from wages for imagined slights. This quiet resentment simmered like a pot on a low flame, potentially boiling over into calculated reprisal. As the grandfather clock in the hall chimed 11, its resonant tolls echoing through the manor like a harbinger of doom, a discordant note shattered the musical harmony. Victor's melody faltered, replaced by a strangled gasp that reverberated through the adjoining rooms. Elena was the first to rise, her silk gown rustling as she hurried to the music room door. Pushing it open, she beheld a sight that elicited a scream piercing enough to rival the storm's fury. Victor slumped lifeless over the piano keys, his neck encircled by a taut strand of piano wire, drawn so tightly that it had sliced into his flesh, crimson blood pooling upon the ivory and ebony. The guests converged in horror. "Good heavens!" Reginald exclaimed, his voice quavering with what might have been genuine shock or masterful feigning. "Who could have perpetrated such an atrocity?" Marcus Thorne knelt beside the body, his eyes narrowing speculatively. "The wire! It's from his own instrument. A fitting coda for a maestro, one might say." Sarah dropped her tray with a clatter, sherry spilling like blood across the rug as tears welled in her eyes. "Master Victor! Oh, merciful Lord, no!" Hargrove, maintaining his composure amid the chaos, stepped forward. "I shall summon the authorities at once, madam." But the storm had wrought its mischief. The telephone lines lay severed by fallen branches, isolating the manor from the outside world. A stable boy was dispatched through the deluge to the village, and by midnight the local constable arrived, his uniform sodden, to seal the room and preserve the scene. Yet the complexity of the crime demanded a keener intellect. By fortuitous circumstance, Hercule Poirot, the renowned Belgian detective, was sojourning at a neighbouring estate, engaged in a minor consultation. A telegram, borne through the night by a determined messenger, summoned him forthwith. Arriving the following morning in his chauffeur Daimler, Poirot alighted with his characteristic precision, his egg-shaped head held high, his meticulously waxed moustache curling symmetrically, and his piercing green eyes surveying the manor with unerring acuity. Clad in an impeccable tweed suit tailored to his compact frame, Poirot embodied order in a world of disarray. His psychology was that of a fastidious observer, his little grey cells attuned to the subtle asymmetries of human behaviour, abhorring chaos and delighting in the meticulous reconstruction of truth. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot murmured upon entering the music room, his accent a melodic blend of French inflection and Belgian exactitude. "The music room murder, a veritable symphony of deception, but fear not. Hercule Poirot shall conduct the orchestra of clues until the discordant notes reveal the culprit." Thus began the unravelling of the enigma, as the storm abated outside, leaving only the tempest of suspicions to rage within the walls of Ashford Manor. Chapter 2. Shadows in the Storm. As the first pallid rays of dawn pierced the leaden sky over Ashford Manor, the storm's fury had subsided into a persistent drizzle, casting a sombre veil upon the estate. The ancient oaks, their branches bowed under the weight of rain, dripped melancholically onto the sodden lawns, while the gravel paths gleamed like veins of quicksilver. Inside, the manor retained its air of oppressive grandeur, the corridors echoing with the muffled footsteps of servants and the occasional sigh of wind through ill-fitted casements. The music room, now a chamber of death, stood cordoned off by the constable's makeshift barriers, stout ropes strung between chairs, preserving the macabre tableau within. Victor Langford's body removed to the village morgue, but the blood-stained keys and severed piano wire left as silent witnesses to the atrocity. Hercule Poirot, having arrived amid the morning mist, commenced his investigation with the meticulous precision that had rendered him legendary. Accompanied by the local constable, a burly fellow named Wilkins, whose moustache rivaled Poirot's in luxuriance, though not in symmetry, the detective entered the music room. The air hung heavy with the metallic tang of blood and the faint, lingering scent of Victor's cologne. Poirot's green eyes, sharp as a falcon's, swept the scene, cataloguing every detail with his vaunted little grey cells. "Observe, constable," Poirot intoned, his voice a measured cadence. "The wire. It is from the bass strings of the piano itself, torn free with considerable force. The killer possessed strength, or perhaps desperation. And here, upon the pedal, a scrap of fine silk fabric, azure in hue, snagged as if in haste." Wilkins nodded gruffly, scribbling in his notebook. Further scrutiny revealed footprints imprinted in the thick pile of the Persian rug, muddied tread marks suggesting entry from the garden, though the French doors to the terrace were bolted from within, their locks undisturbed. A smudged fingerprint adorned the window latch, blurred as if wiped hastily, hinting at an attempt to simulate an intruder's presence. Poirot knelt, his patent leather shoes gleaming incongruously against the rug, and examined a faint scuff mark on the floorboards near the piano stool. A clue perhaps to a struggle, or merely the victim's final throes. Satisfied with his initial survey, Poirot requested interviews with the suspects to be conducted in the library, a sanctum of intellectual repose, its walls lined with leather-bound volumes of Dickens and Thackeray. The air redolent of aged paper and the embers of a dying fire. Heavy oak furniture, including a massive desk cluttered with inkwells and ledgers, provided a stage for the unfolding drama. One by one, the inhabitants were summoned, each bearing the psychological imprints of the night's horror. Elena Langford entered first, her ethereal beauty undimmed by the ordeal, though dark circles shadowed her emerald eyes. She seated herself primly in a high-backed chair, her hands clasped in her lap to conceal their subtle tremor. "Monsieur Poirot," she began, her voice a melodious contralto laced with feigned composure, "this tragedy has shattered us all. Victor was not without flaws, but he was my husband." Poirot inclined his head sympathetically, his moustache twitching as he assessed her. "Madam, the heart, it is a labyrinth of shadows. You were observed in heated discourse with Monsieur Langford earlier that evening, over a letter, was it not? A matter of some delicacy?" Elena's porcelain cheeks flushed a delicate rose. "A trifling disagreement, nothing more. Financial concerns, you understand. Victor's tours often left the estate's coffers strained." Yet Poirot noted the evasion in her gaze, a psychological fissure. Her poise cracked under scrutiny, suggesting concealed depths, perhaps an extramarital liaison, or intimate knowledge of Victor's will, which promised her a substantial inheritance. Her alibi, attending to guests in the drawing-room, seemed ironclad, but alibis, Poirot knew, were often illusions. Next came Reginald Langford, slouching into the room with the indolence of a man accustomed to vice. He collapsed into the chair, reeking faintly of brandy despite the early hour, his ruddy face etched with lines of dissipation. "Bloody awful business, this," he grumbled, his sneer momentarily subdued. "Victor was a tight-fisted sod, but murder? Dash it all! Monsieur Reginald," Poirot queried, his tone probing, "your fraternal bond, it was strained, no? Debts accumulate like autumn leaves, and your brother held the purse strings." Reginald shifted uncomfortably, his fidgeting hands betraying inner turmoil, a sign of guilt, or merely the ravages of a profligate life. He claimed an alibi of a solitary promenade in the garden, his boots muddied to corroborate, yet the timeline placed his return mere minutes before the fatal gasp. Poirot filed away a red herring. Reginald's envy was palpable, but his cowardice might preclude direct action. Marcus Thorne followed, pacing into the library with the predatory grace that defined him. His dark eyes smouldered as he perched on the chair's edge, his lean frame taut with restrained energy. Victor was a thief of genius, he declared bitterly. He pilfered my compositions, passed them as his own. I loathed him, yes, but I am a musician, not a murderer. Poirot's eyes narrowed, detecting the obsessive intensity in Marcus's demeanour, a motive forged in professional betrayal. A programme from a recent Vienna concert, discovered in Marcus's valise, detailed a public humiliation at Victor's hands. His alibi, solitary reflection in his guest chamber, unchallenged yet unverifiable. Sarah Jenkins entered timidly, her petite form dwarfed by the room's grandeur. She curtsied awkwardly, her hazel eyes brimming with unshed tears, her freckled cheeks pale. "Oh, sir," she whispered, "Master Victor was ever so kind. To think he's gone." "Ma petite," Poirot soothed. "The affections of the heart, they can lead to great sorrow or folly. You harboured sentiments for him, non? Stolen moments, perhaps?" Sarah blushed furiously, confessing to unrequited adoration, but her slight build rendered the physical act of strangulation improbable, a clever misdirection, or genuine innocence. Her alibi, serving refreshments witnessed by all. Finally, Mr. Hargrove stood rigidly before the desk, his steely eyes impassive. "I have served this house for 3 decades, monsieur," he stated flatly. "Despite the master's exigencies, I remained dutiful. At the hour of death, I was inventorying the pantry." Poirot discerned a flicker of repressed fury in the butler's composure, a timeline anomaly. The grandfather clock had been manipulated, its hands retarded by 10 minutes, potentially fabricating Hargrove's absence. Years of humiliations could ferment into lethal indignation. As the interviews concluded, Poirot ventured into the garden, the mist cloaking the topiary in ethereal shrouds. He strolled the gravel paths, his mind a whirlwind of deductions. "The clues, they intertwine like the themes in a fugue," he murmured to himself. "The silk from Madame's gown, the muddied prints of Reginald, the smudged latch perhaps by Marcus's hand. Yet one melody rings false, a discord amid the harmony." The day waned under gathering clouds, the manor's shadows lengthening like accusatory fingers. Suspicions festered, alliances whispered in hushed corners, as the enigma of the slain pianist deepened. Chapter 3. Echoes of Betrayal. The afternoon sun, a feeble orb shrouded in the remnants of the storm's grey pall, cast elongated shadows across the manicured lawns of Ashford Manor, transforming the estate into a theatre of spectral intrigue. The air, heavy with the earthy scent of damp soil and wilting roses, seemed to pulse with unspoken accusations, as if the very grounds conspired to unearth the buried secrets of its inhabitants. Within the manor's hallowed halls, the atmosphere thickened with tension. Servants whispered in alcoves, their eyes darting suspiciously, while the suspects moved like ghosts through the corridors, each step echoing the betrayal that had shattered their fragile veneer of civility. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the oppressive mood, pursued his investigation with the relentless precision of a maestro conducting a complex overture. Having gleaned initial insights from the interviews, he now delved deeper into the labyrinth of human psyches, employing his unparalleled acumen to probe behaviours and unearth concealed truths. The library, with its towering bookshelves and the faint crackle of a rekindled fire in the grate, served once more as his sanctum. Yet Poirot ventured beyond its confines, requisitioning access to private quarters under the constable's watchful eye, where revelations awaited like hidden stanzas in a forgotten score. In Elena Langford's boudoir, a chamber of feminine opulence adorned with lace curtains and a vanity strewn with crystal perfume vials, Poirot discovered a leather-bound diary secreted within a locked drawer, forced open with Wilkins' reluctant assistance. The entries, penned in Elena's elegant script, painted a portrait of marital discord, vivid accounts of Victor's infidelities, laced with vengeful fantasies that curdled the blood. "He shall pay for his betrayals," one passage read, "in coin more precious than gold." Yet, curiously, the diatribe ceased abruptly weeks prior, as if the author had anticipated scrutiny. Was this a genuine catharsis, or a cunningly planted red herring designed to divert suspicion? Poirot's little grey cell's word, Elena's psychology, a tapestry of jealousy interwoven with calculated restraint, suggested she might orchestrate such a deception to mask her innocence or guilt. Physical evidence continued to accumulate, each clue a note in the symphony of deception. The azure silk fabric from the piano pedal, upon closer examination under Poirot's magnifying glass, matched a tear in Elena's gown from the previous evening. But a similar snag adorned Sarah Jenkins' apron, hinting at transference during the chaotic discovery of the body. Footprints in the rug led circuitously to the conservatory, a glass-enclosed haven of exotic ferns and blooming orchids, where witnesses recalled Marcus Thorne in vehement argument with Victor mere days before. The altercation, overheard by a gardener, revolved around accusations of plagiarism, Marcus claiming Victor had appropriated his original compositions for personal acclaim. Reconvening the suspects for pointed interrogations, Poirot began with Reginald Langford, summoning him to the conservatory amid the humid air thick with floral perfumes and... Reginald arrived flushed, his dishevelled appearance betraying a recent indulgence in the cellars. "Monsieur Reginald," Poirot intoned, his voice slicing through the humidity like a stiletto. "Your pecuniary embarrassments, they tower like the spires of this manor. Victor's demise conveniently eradicates your debts, does it not?" Reginald blustered, his ruddy cheeks deepening to crimson. "Preposterous! I was in the garden, as I said. The mud on my boots attests to it." But Poirot, with a flourish, produced a sample of the soil. Dry and crumbly, impossible in the deluge that had persisted until midnight. Confronted, Reginald crumpled like a discarded score. "All right, I confess, to smuggling contraband brandy through the servants' entrance, but murder? I'd sooner stake my life at the tables than wield that wire." This admission, while exposing Reginald's duplicity, served as a red herring. His timeline, corroborated by a hidden flask found in the shrubbery, absolved him of the deed, though it deepened the pool of suspicions. Poirot noted the psychological shift. Reginald's bluster masked profound fear, not of culpability, but of disinheritance. Victor's will, glimpsed in the estate's safe, threatened to excise him entirely for his profligacy. Marcus Thorne was next, escorted to the drawing-room where the remnants of the previous evening's gathering, scattered sherry glasses and a forgotten shawl, evoked the prelude to tragedy. Marcus paced with his characteristic intensity, his dark eyes flashing like storm clouds. "You persist in this inquisition," he sneered, "but Victor's thievery of my work merits justice, not homicide." "Justice, monsieur," Poirot countered, producing the Vienna concert programme. "This documents your public mortification, and the letter you forged to discredit him, admit it." Under pressure, Marcus conceded to the epistolary sabotage, a missive alleging Victor's compositions were derivative. Yet he vehemently denied violence, his alibi of solitary composition in his room ostensibly verified by Hargrove's passing glance. Poirot discerned the obsession in Marcus's rigid posture, a man whose ambition had curdled into hatred, yet whose precision might extend to a flawless crime. Sarah Jenkins, summoned to the kitchen amid the clatter of pots and the aroma of baking scones, trembled like a leaf in the wind. Her petite frame huddled on a stool, hazel eyes wide, with trepidation. "Ma petite Sarah," Poirot gentled his tone, "the heart's echoes can betray us. You cherished Victor beyond servitude, no? Promises whispered in the moonlight?" Tears cascaded down her freckled cheeks as she nodded, confessing to clandestine rendezvous where Victor had vowed elopement, only to retract in cruelty. "I despised him for it," she sobbed, her psyche fracturing under the weight of scorned affection. But her frailty rendered the act improbable. Strangling required vigour she lacked, or so it seemed, a potential misdirection veiling hidden strength born of despair. Mr. Hargrove, interrogated in the butler's pantry amid shelves of silverware and linens, maintained his stoic facade. "My duties precluded involvement," he asserted, his grey eyes unyielding. Yet a search of his quarters yielded a vial of arsenic, concealed in a boot, unused but potent. "For the rats, sir," he explained. But Poirot sensed the lie. Was this a frame, or evidence of premeditation? Hargrove's resentment, a slow-simmering brew from years of Victor's barbs, could have boiled over. Timeline inconsistencies crystallized, the murder pinpointed at 11:05 by Victor's stopped pocket watch, yet multiple witnesses attested to hearing the nocturne persist until 11:15. Someone had tampered with the timepiece, fabricating alibis. As dusk encroached, a piercing scream rent the air. Sarah, in her attic room, discovered a decanter of sherry laced with poison, untouched but ominous. A warning to silence her, or an attempt to eliminate a perceived threat. Poirot, retreating to the terrace as stars pierced the veil of clouds, pondered the mosaic. "The echoes of betrayal resound," he murmured, stroking his moustache. "Elena's diary, Reginald's smuggling, Marcus's forgery, Sarah's heartbreak, Hargrove's poison, motives entwine like serpents, money for one, revenge for another, secrets binding all." The night deepened, the manor's lights flickering like accusatory eyes as the enigma burgeoned into a crescendo of suspicion. Chapter 4. The Discordant Chord. As the mantle of twilight yielded to the crisp clarity of a new dawn at Ashford Manor, the estate awoke under a sky streaked with the tentative hues of rose and gold, as if the heavens themselves hesitated to illuminate the shadows of treachery below. The storm's vestiges lingered in the form of glistening dew upon the lawns and a chill that seeped through the stone walls, rendering the air within the manor heavy with foreboding. The corridors, once resonant with the strains of Victor's piano, now echoed only with the subdued murmurs of servants and the occasional creak of ancient timbers. As though the house itself mourned its master while harbouring his murderer. Hercule Poirot, ever the paragon of methodical inquiry, convened the suspects in the music room at the stroke of 9, the chamber now shrouded in an aura of solemnity. The grand piano stood veiled beneath a heavy dust sheet, like a corpse awaiting interment, its keys concealed from prying eyes. The chandeliers, dimmed to a sombre glow, cast elongated shadows that danced upon the walls, mimicking the elusive nature of truth. Poirot, positioned at the room's centre with his compact frame exuding quiet authority, addressed the assembled company. Elena, Reginald, Marcus, Sarah, and Hargrove, each seated in a semicircle of ornate chairs, their faces etched with varying degrees of apprehension and defiance. "Mes amis," Poirot commenced, his voice a resonant timbre that commanded attention. "The symphony of this crime approaches its penultimate movement. Hidden motives, like discordant chords, must now be resolved. Let us unveil them." With the constable's assistance, he produced Victor's last will and testament, procured from the estate's solicitor via urgent telegram. The document, read aloud in Poirot's precise accent, revealed stark revelations. Reginald was to be disinherited entirely, his share forfeited due to mounting debts and profligate habits, redirecting the bulk of the fortune to Elena. A codicil whispered of a rumoured illegitimate child with Sarah Jenkins, a scandalous assertion that elicited gasps, though Poirot swiftly debunked it as a baseless calumny propagated by Elena in a fit of jealousy, evidenced by intercepted correspondence. Red herrings proliferated like weeds in an untended garden. A leather glove, weathered and monogrammed with Hargrove's initials, was discovered nestled in the underbrush near the terrace doors. Seemingly incriminating, yet upon inspection, its pristine condition belied exposure to the elements, suggesting it had been planted post-mortem. The muddied footprints traced meticulously to the servants' entrance proved ubiquitous. Every resident, from the lowliest scullery maid to the haughty guests, had traversed that threshold in the preceding days, rendering the clue a tantalizing but ultimately fruitless diversion. Poirot's psychological probes delved deeper, peeling back layers of facade to expose the raw undercurrents of the human soul. Elena's ethereal composure, so meticulously maintained, masked a burgeoning hysteria. Her emerald eyes darted furtively, and her hands betrayed a subtle quiver, indicative of a conscience besieged by guilt or fear. Reginald's habitual bluster, a shield of bravado, concealed a profound terror, not merely of poverty, but of exposure, his ruddy features paling at the mention of the will. Marcus Thorne's arrogance, a veneer of intellectual superiority, hid a core of insecurity. His smouldering gaze faltered when confronted with the plagiarized composition, a melody he claimed as his own, pilfered during their shared apprenticeship. Sarah's copious tears, once evoking sympathy, now veiled a nascent cunning. Her wide hazel eyes, though brimmed with moisture, held a calculating glint. Hargrove's stoic demeanour, the epitome of butlerly reserve, betrayed subtle calculations. A fleeting micro-expression of satisfaction crossed his weathered face when suspicions alighted elsewhere. The morning's revelations gave way to an escalating incident that shattered the fragile truce. During luncheon in the dining hall, a grandiose chamber adorned with ancestral portraits whose stern gazes seemed to judge the living. A sudden twang reverberated through the air. A length of piano wire, surreptitiously strung across the doorway to the adjoining drawing room, snapped taut as Marcus Thorne crossed the threshold, whipping perilously close to his throat and drawing a thin line of blood upon his cheek. He staggered back, clutching his face, his dark eyes wide with shock. "By Jove!" Reginald exclaimed, leaping to his feet amid the clatter of dropped cutlery. An attempt on his life, or a warning, chaos ensued. Sarah shrieked, Elena paled to the hue of alabaster, and Hargrove moved with uncharacteristic haste to summon aid. Poirot, unflappable, examined the wire, identical to the murder weapon, rigged with rudimentary ingenuity. A staged accident, perhaps, he mused aloud, to sow discord or deflect scrutiny. The perpetrator grows bold or desperate. Seizing the momentum, Poirot conducted private interrogations in the seclusion of the study. A room redolent of leather and pipe tobacco, its walls lined with maps of far-flung estates. To Elena, seated rigidly before the desk. "Madame, the azure silk fragment upon the pedal. It matches your gown precisely. An oversight in the heat of discovery." Elena's composure fractured. She faltered, her voice a whisper. "It must have been torn earlier, during the evening's preparations, I swear it." Yet her evasion rang hollow, her psychology revealing a woman ensnared by her own web of deceit, jealousy morphing into something darker. To Sarah, in the same chair now warmed by prior occupants. "The love letters discovered in Victor's desk. They bear your hand, ma petite." She nodded tremulously, tears anew, but Poirot produced the missives, pointing to inconsistencies in the ink, faded in places, mismatched in hue. "Forgeries, non? Crafted to inflame suspicions." Sarah's cunning facade crumbled. She admitted to no such correspondence, suggesting a frame orchestrated to exploit her vulnerability. The clues converged like tributaries into a mighty river. The smudged fingerprint on the window latch matched none of the suspect's prints, taken that morning for comparison, but its deliberate blurring implied tampering, not an intruder, but an insider simulating one. The poisoned sherry from the prior eve, analysed discreetly by Poirot with a rudimentary test kit, contained traces of arsenic matching Hargrove's vial, yet the dosage was non-lethal, a ploy to terrorise rather than terminate. As twilight descended once more, draping the manor in velvet shadows pierced by the flicker of gas lamps, Poirot reconvened the group in the drawing room. The fire crackled ominously in the grate, casting grotesque silhouettes upon the walls. "The discordant chord resolves," he declared, his green eyes gleaming with the fire of revelation. "Tomorrow, at the break of day, the truth shall resound in full crescendo. Until then, vigilance, for the murderer walks among us still." The suspects dispersed, each retreating to their quarters with heavy hearts and watchful eyes. Whispers echoed through the halls. Alliances fractured, as the enigma of the slain pianist teetered on the precipice of resolution. Outside, the wind whispered through the oaks, a harbinger of the storm's return, or perhaps the final unveiling of Betrayal's bitter melody. Chapter 5. The Final Crescendo. As the first blush of dawn gilded the spires of Ashford Manor, the estate stirred from its nocturnal vigil, the air crisp with the promise of revelation. The lawns, still bejewelled with dew, stretched out like a verdant tapestry under a sky streaked with amber and indigo, as if the heavens orchestrated a backdrop for the drama's denouement. Within the manor's venerable walls, the atmosphere thrummed with electric anticipation. Servants moved with hushed deference, their eyes wide with speculation, while the suspects, Elena's ethereal grace now taut with strain, Reginald's dissipation masked by pallor, Marcus's predatory poise fractured by unease, Sarah's fragility on the verge of shattering, and Hargrove's stoicism a brittle facade, converged once more in the music room at Poirot's summons. The chamber, bathed in the soft diffusion of morning light filtering through the velvet draperies, retained its aura of faded opulence. The grand piano, unveiled at Poirot's insistence, stood as a silent sentinel, its keys cleansed of blood, but echoing with the ghost of Victor's final nocturne. Crystal chandeliers caught the sun's rays, scattering prismatic flecks across the polished mahogany floors, illuminating the semicircle of chairs where the assembly seated themselves. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian with his egg-shaped head, impeccably waxed moustache, and piercing green eyes that missed naught, positioned himself before the piano, his compact frame radiating the quiet authority of one who held the thread-staves of fate. "Mes amis," Poirot intoned, his voice a masterful blend of gravitas and precision, resonating through the room like the opening bars of a symphony's finale. The hour of truth has struck. The murder of Victor Langford, that virtuoso whose life was a crescendo of ambition and whose death a brutal staccato, was no impulsive discord, but a meticulously composed opus of malice. We have navigated the labyrinth of clues, physical remnants like the azure silk and muddied footprints, psychological dissonances in alibis and behaviors, timeline aberrations that twisted like fugal inversions, and hidden motives that lurked in the shadows of money, revenge, and secreted passions. Now, Hercule Poirot shall conduct the resolution. He paced deliberately, his patent leather shoes clicking rhythmically upon the floor, his gaze sweeping the faces before him, each a mask concealing turmoil. Let us recapitulate the symphony's movements, the method, strangulation with piano wire, poetic in its cruelty, demanding intimacy with the instrument and the victim. The scene, locked from within, yet suggestive of intrusion through smudged latches and garden tracks, a clever illusion, the suspects, each with motive as compelling as a leitmotif. Poirot turned first to Elena, her emerald eyes meeting his with defiant poise. Madame Langford, your jealousy burned like a fortissimo. Victor's infidelities, his eclipsing fame, the will that enriched you. The silk from your gown snagged upon the pedal, your diary brimmed with vengeful prose. Yet your love, though scarred, endured. You discovered the body in genuine horror, your tremor not of guilt but grief. Non, you are not the composer of this crime. Elena's shoulders sagged infinitesimally, a sigh escaping her lips like a released arpeggio. Next Reginald, slouched in his chair, his ruddy features etched with apprehension. Monsieur Reginald, your envy was a relentless ostinato, debts mounting, disinheritance looming, your brother's miserliness a thorn, the muddied boots, the smuggling alibi exposed, yet your cowardice, that profound fear of consequence, stayed your hand. You schemed for fortune, but not for blood. Reginald exhaled audibly, his sneer softening into reluctant relief. Poirot's gaze alighted upon Sarah, her petite form quivering, hazel eyes brimming with trepidation. Ma petite Sarah, your unrequited love was a plaintive melody. Stolen glances, broken promises, a heart scorned to hatred. The forged letters, the poisoned sherry aimed at you as diversion, yet your fragility, both physical and emotional, precluded the brute force required. Your tears veil innocence, not cunning. Sarah buried her face in her hands, sobs racking her slight frame like tremolos. Hargrove stood rigidly, his steely eyes unblinking. Monsieur Hargrove, your resentment simmered like a subdued baseline. Years of humiliations, the arsenic vial a potential weapon, the tampered clock affording alibi, yet your loyalty, forged in decades of service, proved unbreakable. The glove planted in the garden, a misdirection away from you? Hargrove inclined his head fractionally, a flicker of gratitude in his weathered visage. Finally, Poirot pivoted toward Marcus Thorne, whose lean frame tensed like a coiled spring, dark eyes smouldering with barely contained fury. Ah, Monsieur Thorne, the rival whose motive crescendos above all, not mere professional rancor, but a profound betrayal. Once protégé, you were discarded when your talent threatened eclipse. But deeper, Victor's blackmail over your youthful forgery of credentials, a secret that could shatter your career. The plagiarized composition, merely the overture. Marcus's aquiline features hardened, his voice a snarl. Conjecture, Poirot. You have no proof. Au contraire, Poirot countered, his moustache twitching with triumph. The clues harmonize against you. The piano wire, sourced from a spare in your luggage, confirmed by the maker's mark. Entry via the concealed passage from the conservatory, knowledge gleaned from prior sojourns here. Its latch oiled recently. The smudged fingerprint, yours, wiped in haste but not erased. The rigged wire at luncheon, a desperate bid to feign victimhood. And the fatal cadence. Victor's dying grasp clutched a cuff button from your shirt, concealed in his palm, overlooked until my grey cells perceived its significance, engraved with your initials, lost in the struggle. The room fell silent, the weight of accusation hanging like a sustained fermata. Marcus paled, his composure fracturing like shattered crystal. "Curse you, Poirot! He ruined me, stole my work, threatened exposure." I confronted him, demanded restitution. He laughed, and the wire was at hand. His confession tumbled forth, a torrent of pent rage and regret. Constable Wilkins stepped forward, manacles clinking as Marcus was led away, his defiance crumbling into defeat. The assembly dispersed, the manor's oppressive shroud lifting with the sun's ascent. Poirot lingered by the piano, his fingers tracing the keys idly. The human soul, it composes its own tragic symphony, he murmured philosophically. Ambition, betrayal, the pursuit of harmony amid discord, such is the enigma of life. As the day unfolded, Ashford Manor exhaled its secrets, the storm's echoes fading into memory. Elena, heiress now in truth, contemplated a future unshackled. Reginald, chastened, vowed reform. Sarah sought solace in service. Hargrove resumed his duties with quiet dignity. The slain pianist's melody lingered, a haunting refrain in the annals of crime. Thus the curtain descended upon the music-room murder, justice resounding in Poirot's masterful finale.